I have been feeling for a long time the next greatest move of God's Spirit is going to start with the least likely Jews. My guest has 11 generations of Israelis. His name, Erez Sasson.
So this is something that the world needs to know. The concept that we had in our mind was wrong. The history tells us otherwise, just as the prophecies tell us, the Jews returning to the land, filling here and populating and building and growing. The concept that I hear that the Jews came and took the land from the poor Palestinian, totally untrue. The word Palestine, it comes from Philistines that entered the land.
Aris had an irrefutable encounter with the living God.
I grew up in a traditional home, not a religious house, but an Israeli Jewish home, celebrating holidays, keeping kosher. And I took it one step further. I became more observing, and it felt good. But for a reason that I don't know, joining the army, which is mandatory at the age of 18, I pushed the Lord away, and I lived my life as a non-believer, non-observing Jew. I looked back, and I felt that the Lord tried to reach me a few times, and I pushed him away. But then he used the strongest tool of them all. He used my son.
What caused you to believe that Yeshua, that's Hebrew for Jesus, is the one Messiah of the whole world?
During my life, I tried to do different things. I studied many things. I became here in the land of Israel a tour guide that has to learn the history, has to open up the book, the New Testament, for the first time ever.
Did you feel you were sinning by reading it initially?
You know, for us here in Israel as Jews, what you know of Christianity, you see statues, you see the icons of the Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, and telling yourself, this looks a bit, a bit paganism to me. I mean, I better push away from that. And then I'm opening the New Testament, and I even read it in Hebrew, and it felt like right at home. I mean, kind of like I'm reading the Old Testament. It felt like the continuing of it. I said, what was the big deal? What was I afraid of all these years? I got married. We had our first child. And then when my wife was pregnant, once again with our second son, Nathaniel, the doctor said there was a problem with the kidney. They even asked us if we should consider an abortion. And I said, no way. I mean, we're against that. From day one, he was taking antibiotics. His left kidney was becoming bigger and bigger. The doctors said perhaps we need to take the kidney out, but he's too delicate, too gentle. Every 3 weeks ultrasound, and me and my wife were devastated. I mean, by that point, I was a tour guide. I was leaving home. On July that year, I guided a Christian group, a missionary group in Nazareth. They saw that I'm in a bad situation, and they said, let's pray together. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not religious in any way. Of course not. I don't believe in Yeshua. But you know what? This will not hurt. We'll do it. I did it, and it felt good. But there was nothing there yet. On the 16th of August, the doctor said, wait, about the surgery that we're thinking of, let's put it aside. Stop taking the antibiotics. The situation is not great, but it's much better. Come back in 3 more months. And then on the 16th of November, we went back to the doctor, and the doctor said, listen, your son is fully healed. And I was shocked. The doctor said he was healed in a miraculous way. And I said, doctor, could you put that in writing? And he said, yes. And I never heard my doctor speak in such a way. And in the next few days, I thought to myself, what just happened? What happened? I looked back, and I felt that the Lord tried to reach me a few times. And I pushed him away. But then he used the strongest tool of them all. He used my son to open up my eyes. And then I said, could this be? I mean, I'm not a fool. Was I blind? And I came to a conclusion that yes, I was. Not only me, I guess a big part of us, a big part of this land. I understood who Messiah is.
October 7th. For those that don't recall what happened on October 7th, I can tell you what happened to me when I read it. I couldn't believe what Hamas did to Israel. I couldn't believe the violence they did. I couldn't believe they would cut off the heads of babies in front of their children and then burn the parents alive.
He said the concept that we had in our mind was wrong. All of us. We're people that want peace. Now it's time to prepare for war. If it comes toward you here, you're going to be ready for that. I mean, I'm sitting now in my room for this Zoom meeting, and it's a bit surreal. They told us in the first few weeks of the war to prepare water. Let me just show you guys. I mean, I have mineral water here for this war. I have a lot of bottles. I have canned food around here. I mean, who knows how this situation is gonna continue and grow? But we're ready.
For me, as an American Jew, it was like I was shocked. But you lived it. You were there. What happened to you?
I got a phone call from my mom early. It's vacation. I'm still sleeping. Woke us up telling us that something happened down south. Of course, we jumped out of bed, turned the news on. As an Israeli here, that war, threats and violence is not new to us. I thought about survival. I thought about my family. What am I to do? I'm up north. Hamas is attacking down south. And if the north is going to be active, meaning Hezbollah attacking from Lebanon, I know Hezbollah is 10 times stronger than Hamas down south. Am I going to stay here and then the situation would be much more threatening? Or should I go back home to Jerusalem? In that day, they told you thousands of rockets and missiles sent from Gaza to all over Israel and to Jerusalem as well. What am I going to do? So then I called friends up north. What is the situation? If they're opening the bunkers, perhaps they know something. Perhaps they're preparing from attack from up north. I'm taking my family and risking the attacks of rockets and missiles and heading to Jerusalem. It was a 2.5-hour drive. You're hearing on the news missiles have arrived to this area, to that area. You're saying, okay, I'm not really in the zone, but I'm getting there in 15 more minutes. They're sending missiles every half an hour, 25 minutes. I have from now on about 20 minutes until they'll shoot again. So I tried to plan how am I going to pass through different areas to keep myself and my family safe.
You have a heart's desire to clear up a lot of misunderstandings with the struggle between the Jews and the Muslims. And there's a lot of misunderstanding in the West.
First of all, the word Palestine. It comes from Philistines that entered the land from the west and settled on the western shoreline 3,300 years ago in the time that the tribes of Israel entered from the eastern side and settled. I'm jumping now to the year 135 AD. At that time, Emperor Hadrian, and he wanted to disconnect any Jewish connection to this land. He changed the name of this land to Syria, Palestina, because of the Philistines, to punish the Jewish people trying to disconnect their connection. Now, the region was known at times as Judea, or the region of Syria, Palestina. And it depends who controls the land. If it's Christians like the Crusaders, then you could understand that more Christians would enter the land. I'm jumping now to the beginning of the 16th century AD. The Ottomans came into control in the year 1516. After a while, they abused this land. A lot of the trees were chopped and sent to Istanbul, and people were taxed here. Eventually, people understood there's not much here to live off. And this land, little by little, was emptying up. Along the shoreline, northern to Jaffa, and in the Galilee area, lots of swamps. And nobody really lived there. The Jews, wanting to return back to the land in the middle end of the 19th century, especially after anti-Semitic attacks from Eastern Europe, the pogroms in Kishinev and others, they were looking for a solution. So some of them left to the States and built a bigger Jewish population back then. But there are those that wanted to return back to the land of their fathers. But how could they? The Ottomans are in control. Well, rich Jews from Western Europe closed the deals with the Ottomans that were in desperate need for money. So they came here and they closed the deal of buying land with good money. The Ottomans sold them the bad lands, meaning the swampland.
When they purchased the original Zionists, if you will, purchased the swamp, that was not a good deal. They didn't know that they would be able to have modern technology and use it. Why would they even purchase swamp?
Just as the prophecies tell us, the Jews returning to the land and settling here and populating and building and growing, they had faith that they would come here to the land of their fathers. And you know what? Even swamp in the Holy Land is good enough for us. We'll turn that swamp into land that is good enough for settling. That's exactly what they did, Sid. A lot have died. A lot were attacked by the locals here. Before that, this land was not something that you would want to control. I mean, I always tell the people, you know what? You don't trust my words. You don't trust the other side is story. Read the books of those who came here at that time. You know what? That's a true picture. For instance, Churchill, he himself said not only that the Arabs are not persecuted, but they're gathering in the land of Israel, implying by great numbers more than the numbers of all the Jews in all the world. Something close to that, Franklin Roosevelt said, since 1921, the Arabs' immigration to the land is greater than the immigration of the Jews. This is something that the world needs to know. In the beginning of the 19th century, the population here was about 185,000 Arab Muslims. They didn't call themselves Palestinian. The region was called. And another, let's say, 65,000 Jews and Christians around here. Until the Jews returned back to the land around the mid-end of the 19th century, about 1870. The Muslim population grew in all those years by about 30%. That's it. The situation back then around the world, especially around the Middle East, was not good. Here, the situation was not that. But yet something happened. The Jews, fulfilling the prophecies, returning here in the middle end of the 19th century, all of a sudden started drying the swamps, all of a sudden started growing fields and building. And what did you have? You had work. That was a call for the Muslims around us. From 1870 until the 1940s, the population grew by 270%. Is it a natural increase in population? No way. What happened is Muslims started coming, looking for work. Muslims started coming and settling here. The concept that I hear that the Jews came and took the land from the poor Palestinians, there weren't Palestinians here. There were Bedouins, wild Bedouins. In the beginning of the 20th century, the Jews were called Palestinian. The history tells us otherwise.
We're coming into Isaiah chapter 60, verse 1 to 3. Let me read this to you. Arise, shine, for your light has come. And here's the key. The glory of the Lord has risen upon you. The glory of the Lord will rise when there is darkness covering the earth. Not just darkness, deep darkness, the peoples. But the Lord shall rise upon you, Israel, and his glory shall be upon you, Israel, and the Gentile nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising. Here's where we're at in this whole maze of wars and rumors of wars in Israel. God is about ready to pour out his glory on the Jewish people. And Erez is a first fruit of this outpouring of God's glory. And when this glory comes, the Jews will fulfill our original God-given destiny to be a light to the nations. And I see thousands, I tell you, Aris, I see thousands of people like you, Orthodox Jewish background, raised up like Paul the Apostle, going to the four corners of the earth and spreading a good disease. It's not COVID, that's a bad disease. The good disease is to know God and to make him Lord of Lords and King of Kings. Do you know God? Repeat this prayer after me and believe it to the best of your ability. Dear God, out loud, dear God, I'm a sinner, and I'm so sorry. I believe that the blood of Yeshua washes away all of my sins, and I'm clean. And now that I'm clean, I make Yeshua my Lord. Lord Yeshua, come and live inside of me. Amen. You said that prayer. He's inside of you. Get ready for the adventure of your life. Shalom, shalom.